So you're going hiking, through the fields and through the forests, up and down the mountain, there and back again. New challenges, new discoveries await, and new humbling mistakes and schoolboy errors to make, such as not double socking it. The name of the game when hiking is to prevent blisters. We must decrease the amount of friction between our feet and our boot by increasing the amount of padding between them. So wearing one thin sock underneath a much thicker sock is the gold standard, and something every hiker would recommend to you. Material choice does also matter. Your thin undersock being a synthetic polyester blend or nylon blend, with your outer sock being a wool blend or merino wool, is a solid combination for helping wick away sweat and remaining breathable. This is quite possibly the single greatest improvement you can make to the longevity of your feet. You can't be raw dogging your hikes with just a single layer of socks. No sir. That is making life unnecessarily more difficult for yourself. New hikers will make the mistake of single socking it, and they will suffer for it. So always stay double socked, and that's easy life. But whatever you do, do not, under any circumstance, wear socks that are made from cotton, as cotton is objectively the worst material choice for socks. The issue is that cotton retains moisture. It will cling to every bead of your sweat with a death grip. They take a long time to dry out, and having perpetually wet socks means having perpetually wet feet, which increases the likelihood of blister formation. Polyester, nylon, wool, merino wool, all fine choices for sock, but cotton is terrible. This is also true for your other articles of clothing as well, especially if you're hiking in cold weather, as you may sweat a little even when hiking in the cold and those perpetually damp. Cotton clothes will absolutely drain you of body heat, transforming your leisurely hike into a teeth-chattering hypothermic hike. Avoid the cotton, and take multiple pairs of spare socks with you on your hike. 2 extra pairs, bare minimum, to keep those feet nice and dry and blister-free. They weigh nothing, take up very little space. There's no excuse to not have multiple redundancies of this essential item. Your feet will thank you. The pair you wear for the way there, a spare pair for the way back, and an extra pair for any accidents or oddities that may arise. You'll be well covered. Dry feet, happy feet. That's what we want. If you're hiking with others that are less experienced, consider packing some spare socks for them too, as you can't be having your compatriots walking around in wet, sweaty socks all day getting blisters. That's not acceptable. Not on your watch. Also be sure to carry a couple of garbage bags in your pack. One to keep your wet clothes separate from the rest of your gear, and another for your wrappers and litter that you most certainly would never be tempted to ditch by the side of the trail, right? Carry out what you carry in. That's good hiking etiquette. When stopping to rest, take off your boots and give your feet some time to breathe and decompress, and your boots an opportunity to air out a little. And pull out the insoles. Give them some time to air out too. Keeping your insoles on the drier side of life is one component to a blister-free hike. Dull as it may sound, a big part of hiking is indeed moisture management. Gotta play the game. Why not fully commit and dedicate yourself to the cause by carrying half a dozen sheets of a super absorbent kitchen roll in your pack? So, when resting, you can pat down the inside of your boot to help soak up any lingering moisture. It may only soak up the equivalent of a few drops of moisture, but every little helps over the long term. Allow your rest stops to become the intricate, intimate Japanese tea ceremony that they are destined to be. Just imagine, you're going up Mount Scorfell. One may think to themselves, that's an easy hike. Kids and senior citizens climb that one. I don't need hiking boots. I'll just wear my Converse. That's a big mistake, as you will feel every single pebble, stone and rock deep in your soles. And it will be a miserable experience. Whereas that 65-year-old in their hiking boots, double socking it, they're leaving you in the dust. They're having a great old time. They know the secrets. Hiking boots are not just for the weatherproofing or ankle support, it's also about the thickness and hardness of the sole, and also the height of the collar, as lower collared shoes can have the tendency to rub against the back of your heel on every stride. That's Blister City right there. That's where the skin of your heel used to be. So wear the high-collared hiking boot and love your life. When choosing a hiking boot, it's a good idea to buy half a size up from your usual shoe size. This extra space will accommodate the swelling your feet will naturally experience over the course of a hike. Wiggle room for your toes so they don't get absolutely smushed into the toe caps on descents, which can be excruciatingly painful, and also just for the general thickness of the socks you'll be wearing. Aim to have at least 1 centimetre or the width of an index finger between your toes and the front of your boot. Not breaking in your boots prior to hiking. That's a business class express ticket to Blister City. Breaking in just means wearing in your new boots beforehand, like going on a walk around the neighbourhood with them, or, if they're brand new, clean and pristine, wearing them around the house for a day. This gives your boots the time that they need to adjust, loosen up a little, stretch, morph and sculpt themselves to the unique shape of your feet. Having to go through the breaking in process on the trail, that's a whole lot of friction, that's a whole lot of blisters. You will regret it. If you already have hiking boots, but you haven't worn them in a couple of years, it's a good idea to take them out for a little test drive before you commit to a long journey with them, as over the years, the glue and the material can start to degrade. Then you may find your boots falling apart halfway through the hike. If you ever see the sole of someone's shoe on the trail, wondering how that got there, that's what happened. It is called delamination, the great fear. If such a thing were to happen to you, well, it's a good thing you brought that duct tape. Jerry-rig it back together and hobble on home. That's lessons learned. Delamination can occur due to age, but also if you store away your boots before they have completely dried. If there is still any moisture left inside of your boot as you store them away, it can seep into the midsole and start to corrode and degrade the material over time. The same is also true for tents, by the way. Moisture is the enemy, both on trail and off trail, for both camping and hiking. Heed the warning. So, after your hike, remove the insoles and let them air dry. Pat the insides out with an absorbent kitchen roll. Hang the boots up from a washing line. Do what you gotta do. Just don't put them away, still all damp and sweaty. That is how you end up delaminated. Why not throw some safety pins into your kit so you can clip your wet socks to the outside of your pack to dry them out while you walk. That way, you'll always have something dry to change into. Double pin the socks you hang on your pack for extra safety. Some hikers choose alligator clips or clothes pegs instead of pins for this, but if you're ever hiking a trail and you see a single odd sock just lying on the ground, that sock probably belonged to an individual that chose clips over pins. Tragic. Pour one out for the socks that never made it back home. Heartless clippers. Not packing blister pads is a big mistake. Packing blister pads and then being stingy with your blister pads is absolutely unforgivable. If you were to wait until you have a blister to use a blister pad, well then you're done goofed. Big time. The early warning sign of an impending blister is the hot spot. The patch of your skin that is receiving the blister-causing friction will become sore and noticeably hotter than the surrounding area. As soon as you notice the hot spot, that's when you apply the blister pad. Do not wait. Do not delay. Do not think that the problem will fix itself. The hot spot means the blister is coming. It is inevitable. An unstoppable force of nature, unless you apply a blister pad. So, nip the problem in the bud while you can. A solid alternative to blister pads is Luca-tape. It is durable, waterproof, strongly adhesive, and not prone to falling off, which makes it a perfect blister pad. You can't go wrong with Luca-tape. A fresh pair of double socks and a slap of Luca-tape, that is the magic recipe for happy hikers. This combination is the alchemical transmutation of turning whinging and moaning into sighs of relief and big, happy smiles. That's what we want. Duct tape can also be used as a blister pad to somewhat good effect. Wrap a length of it around a piece of card and throw it in the first aid kit. Give yourself options. Not that you would ever need reminding, because you are always immaculately groomed, but it is extremely important to be sure to remember to clip your toenails as short as practically possible before you leave for your hike. Hikers can and do lose and bruise toenails, and it's because they get caught, bumped and smushed against the inside of a boot all day. Leave them long and they won't last long. Even a couple millimeters of nail growth can be enough to cause issues inside of your boot. And if you really want to min-max it, minimize your unnecessary suffering and maximizing your chances of an enjoyable, painless hike, then grab your attractive sister's nail file and round out those sharp edges to eliminate the possibilities of anything getting caught, snagged, bumped or lifted. Otherwise, you may find yourself losing a nail on day 3 of your cross-county hike. Do not be tempted to discount it as ridiculous. Otherwise, that's going to be painful lessons learned the real hard way. And that's not what we want. The sacred emery board is now a part of your pre-hike ritual. And that's just the way it is from now on. You ain't going on no hikes with those hobbit feet. Consider that most of all hiking-related problems are feet-related, then making the deliberate point of giving them an Olympic athlete's level of due care and attention, and you will avoid the majority of hiking-related agonies, and you will be unstoppable. Your only limitations will be your cardiovascular health and the strength of your calves and quadriceps, and the weather. Those problems aren't as easy to solve, but much easier to manage when your feet aren't falling apart. All the advice found in this video can be the difference between a hike that is an enjoyable challenge that you long to repeat, or a gruesome punishment that takes your body a week to recover from. So, would you like to know more? What do you know about electrolytes? Not much. If so, you may find yourself completely wiped out halfway through a hike, having no idea as to why. Electrolyte depletion, the silent and insidious saboteur of hiking. You will sweat to some extent while hiking, and with every bead of sweat, your body loses electrolytes. The 6 main electrolytes are calcium, sodium, chloride, potassium, phosphorus, and magnesium. You lose these minerals in every bead of sweat. If they are not replenished, you will begin to experience electrolyte depletion. The symptoms of this condition are dizziness, confusion, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, lethargy, brain swelling, headaches, muscle cramps, and muscle weakness. All things which won't do you any good as a hiker. So, how do we prevent it? By choosing to pack foods and fluids that are rich in electrolytes. Lucozade, Gatorade, foods that have a high salt content, such as salted peanuts, as an example. Sipping and chewing upon such foods throughout the day will keep your electrolytes well stocked. Managing your electrolytes while hiking should be considered equally as important as staying hydrated with water. If you ever find yourself surprisingly fatigued, dizzy and nauseous, even though you've stayed well hydrated, it's likely an electrolyte problem. You need salts. Electrolyte depletion is a mistake that no hiker will ever make twice. It is debilitating. You can easily make your own homemade isotonic electrolyte drink to take with you on your hikes. 50% orange juice, 50% water, add a generous pinch of ordinary table salt, sodium chloride, and that is 2 of your electrolytes. Grab yourself some low salt, which is a potassium chloride, add a pinch of that, that's 3 of your electrolytes. Easy. The orange juice will contain small quantities of magnesium too. As for food choices, you cannot go wrong with bananas. They are the hiking superfood. They are a gigadose of potassium, which you will most certainly need, as a depletion of potassium will drastically increase your chances of experiencing muscle cramps. Bananas are the way. If you're worried about them getting smushed in your pack, at least eat one before you go. Dose yourself up so that your calves don't start cramping up halfway up the mountain path. Another extremely useful hiking food is trail mix. Easy to make yourself at home. It is usually a combination of dried fruit, chocolate, salted nuts, and dry cereals. It's easy to eat while on the move. The milk chocolate gives you calcium, the nuts and cereals give you magnesium, sodium, chloride, and phosphorus. You will be well covered. Personally, a homemade isotonic electrolyte drink, a bag of homemade trail mix, 2 bananas, a couple of oat bars and a 200-gram jar of Nutella for easy calories is what I'll pack for a day hike. There is no such thing as a bad diet while hiking. I know an individual that eats raw blocks of jelly on their hikes. To each their own. It is also a good idea to carry additional small baggies of salt in your first aid kit for extra electrolytes to add to any additional water you gather, and if not for your own sake, then perhaps for the sake of the others you hike with, or any struggling, sweaty individuals that you encounter along the way. Sodium, salt, is really the coin of the realm out there. A lack of it causes real problems for hikers. Both dehydration and electrolyte depletion can totally wipe you out, so it's important to manage both. Alternatives to the DIY approach: you can buy electrolyte powder in bulk, individual sachets if you're made of money, or tablets. You've got options, but underestimate the need for electrolytes at your own peril. Not carrying enough water. Always carry more water than you think you will need, as being a little encumbered with the weight of an extra litre of water is a little extra challenge, but not having enough water is just downright dangerous. Dehydration will put a swift end to your ambitions. Variables such as temperature, distance, elevation, level of exertion, and different bodies having different requirements make it difficult to give a hard rule on how much water should be carried on any particular hike. But myself as an example, I will carry 2 litres bare minimum for any hike under 4 hours, and anything over 4 hours on a particularly hot day, I will carry 3 litres bare minimum, adding half a litre per 1,500 metres of elevation, and always carrying a portable water filter to replenish supplies if needed. That's the groove I've settled into. Sometimes it's excessive, sometimes it's just right. I would personally rather not take chances, so I'm happy to shoulder the extra water weight, but you may have different requirements and tolerances. One bottle will be a homemade isotonic electrolyte mix, the other 2 will be plain water, but I will always carry extra packets of salt to add to the water to stay dosed up on electrolytes if we're sweating a lot. Many hikers will opt for a hydration bladder instead of multiple bottles, as you can keep it stowed away in your pack. No need to have to keep unpacking and repacking. Just drink from the straw that you attach to a shoulder strap. Easy life. But it is still a good idea to carry at least 1 metal bottle to give you the ability to boil water gathered from local water sources over a campfire. You may not be comfortable with the idea of gathering water from natural sources, but it is important to have the means to do so safely if you ever had to. An alternative to boiling water in a metal container over a campfire is a portable water filter. Soya Mini, Life Straws, you've got options. Being able to filter out the mud, the sand, the sediment, the disease-giving bacteria, the protozoa and the parasites is a no-brainer. A solid answer to otherwise potentially perilous problems. Some popular hiking trails will have taps to refill on water, though whether signposted as non-potable or not, the water usually isn't of the highest quality, so running it through a water filter eliminates any unpleasant surprises. It's all about options and securities, leaving no room for bad luck. Drink little and often. Don't wait until you experience the sensation of thirst to have a drink. Keep sipping in regular intervals, even if you don't feel like it yet. Keep the tank topped up. Don't wait for the dial to bottom out. You'll reach the onset of fatigue much quicker if your body has to constantly keep playing catch up. Similarly, eat little and often. Don't wait until you feel hungry to start eating. Nibble regularly. It's going to take a while for your body to kick into gear again if you wait until you're feeling the sensations of hunger and thirst before you replenish it. Underestimating how easy it is to get lost when going off trail. Why would you go off trail? Lots of reasons. Primarily to urinate away from the eyes of the world, to fill a water bottle from a brook, to enjoy the bouncy mushroom, to set up camp for the night, or inspect the glowing ancient scroll that makes a strange humming sound. Either way, it is shockingly, embarrassingly easy to completely lose sight of the trail, even if you have only travelled a short distance. The trail camouflages itself behind the brush. Your brain, with goldfish memory, has no innate ability to discern directions. Trees just look like trees, and it's a bold move to stake your life on your ability to distinguish one particular patch of trees from another. Your brain might tell you that it will be fine. It's never fine. Hikers get lost sometimes, and it's because they either take the wrong trail or it's because they headed off trail. Either way, prevent yourself the mini panic attack by checking your compass before you head off trail. Even if it is just to relieve the bladder, perform this check. Knowing the direction you headed off trail allows you to know the direction you need to head back to find it again. You can make this process simpler for yourself by clipping a button compass to one of your pack straps. Quick and easy. What do you know about heat stroke? Otherwise known as sunstroke, heat exhaustion, or hypothermia, is one of the biggest causes of hiker mortality. It kills dozens of hikers every year. It is fatal. So, what is it and how do we avoid it? Heat stroke is the body overheating, causing the brain and other organs to completely shut down, leading to death. Hiking in high temperatures and high humidities, and especially the combination of the two, leads to heat stroke. The initial symptoms of heat stroke include dizziness, blurred vision, headaches, nausea, a loss of balance, feeling faint, and lightheadedness. Deeper symptoms of heat stroke are delirium, hallucinations, collapsing unconscious, brain damage, and ultimately death due to overheat or death due to falling as a result of the delirium, dizziness, and loss of balance. Inexperienced hikers may check the weather forecast and pay mind to the temperature, but do not recognize the importance of this value, the humidity. It is the hidden venomous snake in the grass. It could be said that your body cools itself down by sweating, but on a deeper level, it's actually the sweat absorbs your body heat. The sweat then evaporates into the air and carries away your body heat with it. This cools you down. But if the air is already filled with moisture, which we call high humidity, then it becomes increasingly more difficult for your sweat to evaporate into it. Thus, your body loses the ability to cool itself, your core body temperature will start to rise, and you will start to experience heat stroke. And it is especially perilous for hikers, as 1. They're miles away from civilization and continuously exposed to direct sunlight. 2. The terrain of the hike, combined with the loss of balance and delirium, may cause them to fall and hit their head or tumble down a ravine. 3. The physical exertion leading up to and during the heat stroke further increases body temperature. And 4. They may not even realise what is happening to them, nor the gravity of the situation. To highlight the severity of heat stroke, if we were to put it on a spectrum from treatable, manageable problem to death sentence, out in the wild, heat stroke is unfortunately closer to death sentence than it is treatable. Prevention is really the only cure. The temperature will determine how much heat your body gains, but the humidity will determine whether or not your body will manage to get rid of that heat. So these two values are equally as important. We can better understand these two values and how they interact with each other with the heat index. The heat index combines both temperature and humidity to give you a new value, and this value communicates whether or not being out in this weather carries a risk of heat stroke. Let's play with some examples. 28 degrees Celsius and 40% humidity. It would certainly be a hot, uncomfortable hike, but not perilous. Little to no risk of heat stroke. But if we alter these two values slightly to make it 29 degrees and 60% humidity, we are now in heat stroke territory. Exertion in this weather can lead to heat stroke. Your body will struggle to regulate its body temperature in this weather. How about 32 degrees and 70% humidity? Well, it was a questionable decision to even leave the house that day. You were ambitious. In recent memory, we have the case of Dr. Michael Mosley, a celebrity TV doctor who died of heat stroke while on holiday in Greece. He went out for a hike in 40-degree, 40% humidity weather, which is big-time heat stroke weather, did not take his phone with him, and only gave vague details as to where he was going. He never returned home. He went missing. His body was found dead on the 5th day of the search. He collapsed unconscious due to heat stroke and never regained consciousness. And this all occurred within 1.5 miles of towns, hotels and beach resorts, which is not the kind of distance away from civilization where you might expect to have to worry about such things. But heat stroke doesn't care whether you're a mile away from civilization or 10 miles away from civilization. Once it has sunk its teeth and claws into you, it's pretty much over. So respect these two values and venerate the heat index. Don't bite off more than you can chew weather-wise and you'll be alright. The spirit may be strong, but the body has its inherent, non-negotiable limitations. The best case scenario of a high heat, high humidity hike is you complete the hike, but had an absolutely gruesome, miserable, sweat-soaked time. Worst case scenario, heat stroke, and that's a lose-lose situation. So have a barbecue and a couple beers instead. Much better. That's what we like. If you do find yourself hiking on the hotter side of the spectrum, what are some best practices to keep you from suffering too greatly? Aside from wearing loose-fitting clothing, lighter in colour, ideally white, a couple tips. Do not underestimate the value of a stylish tactical hand fan, as being able to create your own breeze to aid your body in evaporating its sweat and dissipating its heat is a godsend. It is an item you will be extremely glad you stuffed away in the bottom of your pack. You will never not love it. The humble, sweaty others that you hike with will be begging to use it. You can bet money on it. Whip it out and just count how many seconds it takes them to start asking. It could genuinely make a life-saving difference in a heat stroke scenario. Sitting under the shade of a tree while fanning yourself. You don't really have any better options. One may be tempted to wipe the sweat off themselves. Do not do this. This does not help. In fact, it only makes it worse. Your sweat needs time on your skin to absorb enough of your body heat to begin evaporating. If you prematurely wipe the sweat off, you are interrupting the process. Your body will then have to produce more sweat to try and finish what it was originally trying to do. You done played yourself, so do not be tempted to wipe away your sweat. Uncomfortable as it is, leave it be, it's trying to help you. Another tip is strategic, non-necessitous shade seeking. Even if you are not yet physically tired, even if you are not yet uncomfortably hot, taking the opportunity to sit in what may be a scarce patch of shade, bust out the tactical hand fan and giving your body a chance to regulate its body temperature a little to get ahead of itself goes a long way. You want to proactively stay ahead of the problem rather than play catch-up. Tortoise strategy rather than hare strategy, if time permits. Though no combination of gear, advice, tactics or strategy can make hiking in high heats and high humidities anything other than an uphill battle. It is only ever masochism. It is only ever barbecue in the backyard weather. Strategic, non-necessitous rests are also equally as important in cold weather hiking, in order to avoid sweating and keeping as dry as possible. Otherwise, we may end up in a dreaded, hypothermic, damp clothes in cold weather type of scenario. Being as damp clothes in cold weather is so unpleasant, pretty much unsolvable and potentially perilous, consider packing a spare t-shirt for your cold weather hikes. That's never a bad idea. If you're hiking in cold weather, it's better to wear multiple thin layers than it is to wear one big layer. One big coat, you'll either be too cold with it off or too hot with it on. So multiple thin layers will allow you to better regulate your body temperature. For cold weather hiking, it is better to stay on the chillier side of the spectrum than it is to tip into the hot and sweaty side of the spectrum. Counterintuitive though that may sound, as once you stop exerting yourself, your body will soon dump its body heat, and then all you're left with is damp clothes, which will rapidly suck out any remaining body heat that you may have, opening you up to the possibility of hypothermia, the opposite of heat stroke, which can be just as fatal. Underestimating how long a hike will take, an easy mistake to make. If you do not yet have first-hand experience with the trail, you do not need to leave it to guesswork. You can utilize the Naismith rule. The Naismith rule is a good framework for estimating how long a hike will take. It proposes, based on an average hiking speed, 12 minutes for every kilometre of distance, plus 10 minutes for every 100 metres of elevation. So if we use Mount Snowdon for an example, using the Google Maps Measure Distance tool to plot your route, the hike to the summit of Mount Snowdon from the start of the Clanberis route is approximately 7 kilometres, so 14 kilometres there and back. That's 168 minutes. The mountain itself is 1,084 metres, so that's another 100 minutes. So it should take you approximately 268 minutes, or 4 hours and 28 minutes, to complete this hike, though this calculation does not account for how long you will spend resting or how long you'll spend chilling on the summit. So add an extra hour on top of that. 5 hours and 28 minutes. Be generous and round it up a little, call it a 6-hour hike. 6 hours might seem like a surprisingly long time for what on paper is just a 4 mile there and 4 mile back kind of hike. But elevation and resting does add a lot of time. So don't guess the duration of a hike. Use the Naismith rule to give you a prediction. Without the Naismith rule, hypothetically, if one were to decide to take this hike in mid-November, starting your hike at noon, well, the sun sets at 5 o'clock, so you may be completing the last quarter of your journey in darkness, unable to see those treacherous ankle-rolling rocks. And that's how you get got. Many such cases. So packing a modest headlamp or flashlight into your kit is a good idea. If your hike were ever to take longer than you anticipated, then being able to see at least a few meters in front of you to avoid the unseen rock or piece of broken wall is a lifesaver. You can also give yourself more grace, room for error, and less exposure to the harshness of the heat by starting your hikes early in the morning rather than at noon. This is especially true if you're doing a multi-day hike with an overnight camp in between, as waking up at the crack of dawn and getting a move on, doing a good portion of your hiking in the coolest hours, that is optimal. No heat stroke under the midday sun for you. No sir. It will also allow you more time to loiter and enjoy the scenic views without having to worry about whether you'll make it back to your destination before the sun sets. No rushing, less accidents. Underestimating the terrain and elevation. One may think Mount Everest is 29,000 feet, so a hike up and over a 3,000 feet mountain or hill must be easy. Not always the case. Even walking 100 meters up a 25-degree incline is almost the equivalent of doing 50 bodyweight squats, which can be surprisingly challenging if that's not what you're expecting or what your legs are used to doing. So if time permits, do some training beforehand. Squats, calf raises, and protein shakes. Solves a lot of problems in life. Hiking is more about endurance than it is about strength, so bodyweight calisthenics will serve you better than weightlifting. Something easy to forget while you're busy making sure you've packed everything in preparation for your hike is checking the weather forecast for the entire day. Make sure to remember. Close the door on unpleasant surprises. It may not be a good idea to rely on just one source of weather forecasting. Get a second or third opinion from other sites. It paints a fuller picture. Not all weather stations forecast the same results. Some seek to betray you, catch you lacking without a raincoat. That's how you get got. Though light showers of rain do sometimes escape the forecast, so it's always a good idea to stuff a light rain jacket or poncho into the bottom of your kit. Also consider getting yourself a pack cover. It is a raincoat specifically for your bag. Most packs will be water resistant to an extent, but if you have precious dry socks in there or fragile electronics, then it is a good idea to be absolutely secure in the knowledge that they will not get wet in a downpour. Your hike may not involve an overnight camp, but it is a good idea to have the means to do so if the sudden need were ever to arise. So pack a bivvy bag. It is essentially just a super lightweight trash bag tent without poles. It is not glamorous, but it will keep the wind and the rain out. Something to crawl into if you need to hunker down or stay the night in an emergency. It will not be comfortable, but it will keep you alive. One of the most common injury amongst hikers is the rolling, twisting, or spraining of the ankle. So consider doing some foot and ankle strength, mobility, and flexibility exercises beforehand. Just make it a part of your life, as it is no fun to discover halfway down the trail that you're heading to Snap City because your ankles are in fact made of glass and your tendons and ligaments are made of tissue paper. A good litmus test: can you stand on the sides of your feet and maintain your balance without pain? If so, great. That's a good start into your ankle flexibility. Of particular importance is dorsiflexion, the bringing of the toes towards the shins. As when walking up inclines, your feet will be forced into this dorsiflex position, whether you like it or not. And that can be quite a fatiguing, uncomfortable stretch on the muscles and tendons if they're not used to it. So a little training beforehand saves a lot of pain and discomfort in the tibialis anterior later on. Grab a belt and start pulling. Your ability to stay balanced is also a deal breaker. It can be the difference between injury and easy life. A quick litmus test. Can you stand on one leg and remain balanced? Can you do that with your eyes closed? That makes it increasingly more difficult. Can you stay balanced while standing on your tiptoes? Can you stay balanced standing one-legged on a tiptoe? How about with eyes closed? If not, then while practicing, notice all the little muscles that are being put to work. Those muscles are going to become very fatigued from hiking across uneven terrain all day. Can you stay balanced while standing on your heels? How about one heel? Eyes closed. Can you stay balanced while standing on the sides of your feet? These are all the compromised and awkward positions that your feet can end up in while hiking. So consider strengthening them and get that cerebellum used to balancing the body in the imperfect situations that hiking often presents. Your final test of Herculean strength is if you can balance one-legged on the side of your foot with your eyes closed. If you can do that, then you have mountain goat, iron ankles, and a juicy, voluptuous cerebellum. We ain't worrying about your hike up the mountain path, no sir. Getting complacent on the return journey. Anecdotally, most of my oopsie daisies have happened on the return journey, when you are at your most tired, both physically and mentally, thinking that the hard part is all over. There's a tendency to start daydreaming, and that's when those ankles and knees start taking a beating. Going into autopilot on descents, stepping on that rock and rolling your ankle, misjudging the height of a step down and landing awkwardly, giving your knee a shocking jolt into an alternate dimension, ripping that meniscus to shreds. That's how it happens. One misstep and you're limping the rest of the way home. So stay alert at all times, including the return journey. Small travel-sized bottles of sunscreen, insect repellent, and bite and sting cream. These are fine additions to a hiking pack. Hikers learn the hard way that you can indeed get sunburned in the middle of winter. They also learn that you can get sunburned even on a cloudy, overcast day. Ultraviolet rays have no trouble penetrating through cloud, so apply some sunscreen, no matter the temperature, lest you wake up the next day with your skin peeling off. Insect repellent, generously applied to your clothes, is also a good idea, as less attention given to the swatting away of bugs flying around you is more attention you can give to the rock that you're about to twist your ankle on. Though, if you want to be a bit more minimalist and not carry these, then at least apply them before you go. It does help. But always carry bite and sting cream. If not for your own sake, then perhaps for the sake of any not-so-stoic individuals that you may be hiking with. That little tube becomes some real good space and weight to problem-solving ratio. Assign yourself the role of tactical pharmacist. There are a few poisonous plants that all hikers must be aware of, as coming into contact with them can lead to rashes or burn blisters. Examples of these plants to avoid are giant hogweed, which can grow up to heights of 15 feet tall, has a large, spoked umbrella-shaped dome of white flowers and purple blotches on its needle-covered stalk. In the spring, before they have the recognisable white umbrella bloom of flowers and 15-foot stature, their leaves are large, palmate, serrated, pointy and teeved. Everything about this plant just looks unfriendly. Brushing your skin against this plant can result in second to third degree burn blisters and even blindness if it gets into your eyes. Not ideal. It is not something you want to walk through in shorts or push your way through. It is one plant, above all else, worth learning to recognise. There is also cow parsnip, which is very similar to giant hogweed, but is smaller, thinner with no purple blotches on its stalk. There is also poison hemlock, which has even smaller flower heads, much thinner stalks, yet has purple blotches on its stalk, with fern-like divided leaves. Here's a bench being colonised by poison hemlock foliage. Think we'll sit somewhere else. There is also wild carrot and water hemlock, which is often found along the edges of water sources. Basically, any plant that has a white umbrella of flowers, avoid touching or brushing against with bare skin. They can all give you contact phytophotodermatitis to varying extents. This results in itching, rashes and blistering. Also avoid the yellow umbrella of flowers of wild parsnip, which too can cause rashes and blisters. Other than that, you've got your poison ivy and poison oak. What they have in common is their leaves are three individual leaflets. There is also poison sumac, which has large, narrow, symmetrically arranged, opposite leaves on a reddish purple stem. Coming into contact with any of these plants will rash your skin up something fierce, though it is not as simple to see these coming. Perhaps you'll only realise after the fact, once your leg or arm has started rashing up. Antihistamines are the remedy for that. Good news, your bite and sting cream is more than likely antihistamine based, so that's handy. Good thing you pack some. Pack yourself a dozen wet wipes into a Ziploc bag. Wipe that trail off your face, boy. There are few greater pleasures in this world than being able to wipe the day and the dirt off of your face every now and then. It is a game changer, and perhaps even mission critical. A lovely complement to your emergency bivvy bag is a lighter and a box of matches for the starting of emergency campfires. Just in case you ever do find yourself lost and having to endure an unplanned camping trip, or just having the means to be able to boil away the bacteria from the water you gathered from a natural source. It's never a bad idea to give yourself options. They may allow you to survive 14 days in the wild after going missing on a hike. It's good to have options. How you lace up your hiking boots, surprisingly, does matter quite a bit. Hiking boots have to be laced a little differently than ordinary shoes, though not all hiking boots are the same. Some have 3 extra eyelets on either side, some have 2, some have 1, some have none. Each one can be laced and tied in a slightly different way, so it's worth looking up how to lace hiking boots to find a video demonstration on a boot that is similar to your own. How you lace up your hiking boots can be the difference between boots that come loose, smush toes, slide, rub, or lift at the heel. All things that can increase pain and blister formation. Along your hiking journey, you may find yourself repeatedly experiencing pain in one particular part of your foot. Different feet, different problems. There are multiple lacing techniques to solve various particular issues. Something to keep in mind for the future. When resting, take the opportunity to roll your shoulders out. Your pack's been pulling on them all day. Stretch and massage the quads and the calves, and stretch and roll out the ankles and the feet to keep them flexible. Gotta keep the blood flowing. You'll start to stiffen up otherwise. After your hike, whether you are back at home or at the campsite, be sure to thoroughly stretch your legs out. Hamstrings, calves, quads, ankles, feet. Stretch and massage everything. Otherwise, you may find yourself waking up the next day absolutely as stiff as a plank of wood, which will be a big problem if you're on a multi-day hike and you've got to get up and get to going again. Just imagine, you find a lovely shaded tree to rest under. You set your pack down, pull out your water bottle, your phone, maybe a map and a compass. You spend some time contemplating the mysteries. Time's up, time to get going again. 2 miles later, you realise you've left something important behind. It happens. So make the habit of, every time you set off from a rest point, take a few steps forward and then look back at the area you were sitting, just to make sure something hasn't been left behind. Something you left on the bench while you were busy thinking about UFOs. This habit has saved me a couple times. The tiredness, the fatigue, the exhaustion of the hike can all make it very easy for things to slip the mind. Be robotic about it. This is just the thing that you do. How you distribute the weight in your pack starts to matter more and more the longer your hikes get. An unevenly balanced pack results in shoulders, spine and hips having to work overtime, keeping you balanced, accelerating Fatigue. The majority of the weight you carry will likely be your water bottles, so taking a few extra seconds to make sure you stow them away properly is worthwhile. Different bags have different instructions as to where the weight should be placed, but the general rule of thumb is that they should be as close to the back as possible, in line with the spine, and between or just below the shoulder blades. Too high and you'll find it difficult to stay balanced. Too low and it will pull on your shoulders. You'll find yourself hunching forward, having to compensate. As time goes on, there may be the tendency to slouch into forward posture due to tiredness. Avoid this temptation. Uncomfortable though it may be to try and maintain an upright posture, if you allow your bowling ball weight head to hunch forward, your neck and your back are going to have to work overtime to compensate for it, fatiguing you much quicker. Straight spine all the time. Hiking has its big problems, but it also has its compounding little problems that all add up into something significant over time. You got to manage and mitigate both for optimal performance. The painkiller of choice for hiking is ibuprofen. Headaches can arise for a variety of reasons. The pain isn't the issue. It's the distraction that the pain causes. It can make you less focused and attentive, more likely to step on that rock that you didn't see and roll your ankle, or having less of your wits about you when descending and blowing that crayon tendon knee out. That's how it happens. Ibuprofen over paracetamol or aspirin, because ibuprofen is also an anti-inflammatory, which has benefits of reducing any swelling of the feet or inflammation of the joints. Little bonus perks. Multifunctional. Some trails are not well signposted. If your plan for getting home was just to go back the way you came, it is a mistake to overestimate your ability to be able to recognize the way you came. Trees just look like trees. If there was any split, fork, crossroad, or intersection in the trail at any point, it does become a bit of a coin flip as to remembering which path you came from. Another mini heart attack. The hippocampus is fallible. So, what can you do? Some hikers will wrap coloured string or ribbon around trees to mark the path they came from, though this isn't foolproof, as someone may remove it, mistaking it for litter. So an alternative is stacking a few rocks and sticks in a particularly recognisable pattern just off the side of the path to have a means of recognising the correct trail that's less likely to be interfered with by other hikers. Also, taking a few steps into the path, turning around, pointing at the trail you came from and then taking a picture is a reference you can use later on your way back. A more analog, supplemental failsafe to that is a small notepad in a pocket. Turn back and look at the path you came from. Sketch it, along with a couple of distinct trees and features. This can be something you reference later on. Add in a cheeky packstrap compass check for some more reinforcement. It may seem excessive. You could just freeball it and maybe be fine, but hikers do get lost sometimes, even experienced ones, and it's either from heading off the path and losing it, or taking the wrong path and ending up God knows where. So anything you can do to not place the burden of getting home on a fallible hippocampus and a goldfish memory is solid wild hiking strategy. Taking 30 seconds to a minute to do this could end up saving you 10 days, so it's always worth doing. Whatever you do, just do not assume that you will be able to recognize a particular patch of trees from 4 hours ago. That is how you end up lost, and you'll be begging for that notepad of split trail sketches. There are various apps useful for hikers that give you the ability to download offline maps and rely upon your phone's always available GPS to navigate. However, it is never a good idea to put all of your eggs in the technology basket. It's good to have some backup analog methods as well. Are you planning on carrying your phone in your pocket? If so, one fall could result in a smashed up, unusable phone. I have seen it happen. Unless you are using it to navigate, then consider keeping your phone bubble wrapped and in your bag for safekeeping. Or keep your phone in your pocket, but carry a spare in your pack. Nokias tend to be quite durable. It's nice to have that peace of mind. This is especially true if you are solo hiking. Having a backup means of contacting the outside world is mission critical. If you can, consider printing out some paper maps of the trail and carrying a compass. An analog backup in case your phone runs out of battery or breaks. And preemptively using Google Maps to study the landmarks of the area beforehand. Where are the lakes? Where are the rivers? In which direction do the rivers travel? Does the river have a bend in it? Are there any forks or splits in the river? Features such as this may allow you to be able to place yourself on the map. Overconfidence when hiking with others. The presence of peers, the presence of cameras, risk assessment tends to evaporate, like jumping over the railings of the Grand Canyon and nearly plummeting thousands of feet to your demise. That's a peer and presence of camera issue. It wouldn't have happened otherwise. There's just something about it. So avoid taking risks that you wouldn't take if you were by yourself. There isn't always safety in numbers, because if you do get injured, there's not really much the others can do for you other than stand around and ask if you're okay every now and then. It's still half an hour to an hour of laying on the floor waiting for a rescue team to reach you. Can't unbreak your ankle or uncrack your head. So be as cautious and self-preserving as you would be if you were solo. If your compatriots wish to dangle off the edge of a cliff, well, someone's got to stay on solid ground to call an air ambulance if it all goes wrong. That's your job. Someone's got to stay alive to read them their last rites as they shuffle off their mortal coil. That's your job. Designated monk. Edges of waterfalls? No thank you, sir. They are hiking mishap hotspots. Gravity is no friend of ours. We must not grant it the opportunity to ruin our lovely day. Does it mean no fun allowed? Well, if it's your neck on the line, then yes, that is exactly what it means. Someone's got to be the prude. It might as well be you. Hiking with others is a bit like the Hunger Games. Something is going to happen to someone, somehow. Your job is to make sure it's not you. Why not keep the predictable problems of hiking fresh in your mind by printing out a hiking mistake bingo card to cross off things as you go along. A nice little masochistic game to play. You'll get at least a couple. Not being skeptical of the ability of others to correctly estimate the difficulty and length of the hike they're inviting you on. Just imagine, someone invites you out on a hike. They assure you it's just a quickie. 2 hours, there and back. A leisurely stroll through the countryside, close to humble civilization. Flat terrain, in pleasant weather. Well, there's a 50% chance that hike turns out to be an absolutely gruesome 8-hour obstacle course of up and down, big hills, rough terrain, in humid, slogfest weather. And you got lost on the way back. It's a disaster. Trusting others, that's how you get got. So if in doubt, be willing to over-prepare. Take the electrolytes, the 3 litres of water, the Luca tape, double socket, wear the hiking boots. The worst case scenario of the hike being as easy as it was described, you carried 5 more pounds of water weight than you otherwise would have. That's no problem, you're strong. What you don't use, pick a plant on the way back and water it. That's your good deed done for the year. The worst case scenario of finding yourself unprepared for a hike more challenging than you expected, well, that's a mile-long list of issues. Similarly, trusting others to bring first aid kits, checking the weather, knowing or studying the route, those are all gambles. Make yourself entirely responsible for your own well-being, and there will be a lot more room for managing surprises. Walking while drinking water from a bottle, eating food, reading a map, or checking your phone. You are inviting the possibility of bad luck into your life. When distracted or multitasking, rocks, roots and branches have a way of spontaneously materializing themselves right in front of you. I have personally seen with my own eyes someone falling and breaking their wrist because they tried to drink and walk at the same time. That's a fine thing to do on flat pavement, but on a rocky trail, that's how you get got. Always keep one eye on the trail. The few seconds it takes to swig a water bottle, that's when you're most likely to trip. That's how they get you. Over time, you will come to find the "it'll be fine" thought is actually a precursor to most of your hiking mishaps. That's how you know it's coming. Learning to do the opposite of what your brain tells you it'll be fine to do is solid, wild hiking strategy. What's the deal with hiking poles? It would be a mistake to assume that they are for the elderly or less physically fit. That is not the case, nor are they just for keeping your balance. Their greatest utility is in being able to deploy your shoulder, chest and arm muscles into your hike, rather than have the burden of it be solely upon your knees and your legs. They are essentially an exoskeleton, off-road four-wheel drive. It transforms hiking into just as much as an upper body workout as a lower body workout, and that may be just what you need if you tend to find yourself inconsolably fatigued and traumatized after a long day of raw dogging it with just your legs. They are useful for scaling up inclines at a decent pace, being as you would no longer be bottlenecked by just your leg strength. They are also extremely useful for declines as well, as declines have the tendency to smush your toes into the front of your boot, which can be excruciatingly painful. Poles can alleviate some of that pressure. They offer you 2 additional points of contact to keep you from losing your balance and maintaining your footing when crossing streams. And sometimes it's just handy to have something to smack the cobwebs out of the way. Hiking poles are never not useful, and being as they are usually made of lightweight aluminium or carbon fibre, it's not too much trouble to carry at least one for the extra versatility when and if needed. Some hikers carry 2, some just 1, some go without. All depends on where you're going and what you're doing. Consider them absolutely essential if you're hiking in snow, and consider them as useful as an extra pair of legs if you're doing a lot of hiking up and down the mountains. Are you familiar with ticks? If so, I'm sorry to hear that. If not, then I apologise in advance. But you gotta know, ticks are small bugs that like to hang out on the tips of leaves, branches and blades of grass, with outstretched arms, waiting for an animal or humble hiker to come along. They will latch onto fur, skin or clothes. They will then crawl into one of your body's warm, dark, sweaty creases or crevices, bite down and go to town, sucking and engorging upon your blood like wingless mosquitoes. The issue is, once they have bitten you and buried their head into your skin, they are not so easy to remove. They really lock themselves in. Trying to brush them off, pinch them or squeeze them off with your fingers isn't going to do anything other than squeeze its bacteria-ridden stomach contents into the bite, increasing your disease risk. That's a big problem, as certain species of tick, one of particular notoriety being the deer tick or black-legged tick, carries certain bacteria responsible for Lyme disease, which is a debilitating illness and has the chance to be transmitted to you through tick bites. Imagine a full-blown, bedridden flu that lasts for 6 months. That's Lyme disease. We want to avoid it. Avril Lavigne got Lyme disease from a tick bite, and if it can happen to Mrs. Lavigne, it can happen to us. So we got to stay vigilant and be ready to deploy the countermeasures. First of all, being the awareness of their existence and checking for them. That's half the battle already won. The other half is knowing how to safely remove them with a pair of tweezers. If there be one thing that you do today, let it be watching a few YouTube videos on proper tick removal. There are right ways and wrong ways of doing it. It's good knowledge. Got to stay clued up. This video in particular has an individual voluntarily allowing a tick to bite them just so they can demonstrate how to remove them. We honour their brave and noble sacrifice, and we like their video. This isn't exclusively a hiking or camping problem. This is a going outside and touching grass in general problem. You might get a tick, your dog might get a tick while out on a walk, someone you walk in with might get a tick. It's just an unfortunate fact of reality. It is better to develop a little paranoia about the existence of ticks than it is to remain oblivious to them, as the consequences of Lyme disease are often quite life-changingly debilitating. The telltale signs of Lyme disease is a circular, sometimes bullseye-shaped rash around the bite site. If you notice yourself having such a rash, get in a time machine and go to the doctors yesterday. Get yourself dosed up on some antibiotics and pray. How do we avoid ticks? Ticks will tend to linger in the long grass or overhanging foliage of trails and game trails. They know to loiter around the edges of paths that get a lot of foot traffic. For example, coming up to a narrow, grassy trail such as this, I'm thinking Tick City. Walking through here, we're thinking ticks. All of that overhanging foliage, that's where ticks want to be. Any trail that has long overhanging grasses that can brush against your ankles or tall brush that can graze your shoulders should raise your eyebrows and get you thinking the possibility of ticks. If it cannot be avoided, if you cannot go around it, if one must walk through such an area, then be sure to check yourself afterwards, diligently. Give yourself a thorough inspection, pat down and rub down before they get a chance to bite. Your shoes, your socks, your trouser legs, your shoulders. Anything that came into contact with the overhanging foliage. You will not feel a tick bite. It is painless, so you cannot rely on that prompt. You have to proactively inspect with your eyes. Ticks will be out in greater numbers in the warmer seasons, after the rain, and on humid days. So an overgrown trail, such as this, after rain, on a humid day, we're definitely thinking Tick City. So you got to keep that head on a swivel and stay strapped at all times. And do not despair. Just be grateful that these monstrous, soul-sucking hellspawn cannot fly. Ah yes, the world is not as terrible as it could be. That's good news. The problem is manageable. There are also insect repellents that repel ticks. Squirt some on your boots, your sock cuffs, trousers, shoulders. Not all repellents are the same. Some apply to clothes, and some are okay to apply directly to skin. Gotta read the labels. A best practice is once you return home, or before you crawl into your tent to sleep, is to strip down and give yourself a full body inspection. If it means squatting over a mirror, then we're squatting over a mirror. Gotta go full TSA on yourself. There's no dignity in it, but there's no dignity in Lyme disease either. Gotta pick your poison. And lastly, the invisible, insidious downfall of hikers that may do everything else right is letting pride ride shotgun with them on the trail. That's bad company. Ego hiking, pride hiking. Treating a hike as a personal challenge, pushing themselves to the point of failure or brink of exhaustion, as they would do in a gym or during a marathon. Not admitting defeat, not humbling thyself before the mountain, refusing to stop halfway up a hill to give their legs a much-needed break, refusing to call it quits for 5 minutes. That's how you get got. Pushing yourself to exhaustion is a good trait for gyms, marathons, and jogging around town where there are people around to assist you and road access for swift ambulances. But is a terrible trait to bring with you into the isolation of the wilderness. Perhaps even a death sentence. The challenges that hiking present should be met slowly, cautiously, tactical, methodical, sterile, and surgical. Tortoise strategy rather than hare strategy. Regularly ask yourself, if I fall here and break my ankle, how screwed am I? If I fall here and crack my head on a rock, how screwed am I? The answer is always extremely screwed. Big time. It may be 30 minutes to an hour before anyone reaches you to assist, so recalibrate that risk assessment to something more appropriate for the isolated nature of the environment. Having the legs give out while pushing yourself to get up and over a hill, 50% chance you fall forward, which might not be too bad, 50% chance you fall backwards, and who knows where you'll end up. Nowhere good. At least a couple people fall off the side of Mount Snowdon every year, and it's not because they're silly, it's because they're exhausted. They slip, they trip, lacking the strength to correct themselves after they lose their balance. Their legs give out. There is no glory to plummeting 2,000 feet to your demise. But there is glory in taking a well-earned, well-deserved rest and recuperation. If it means stopping to rest after every 10 steps up a 30-degree incline, then we're stopping to rest after every 10 steps. It's just the way it is. Sometimes those calves just need a minute to catch up. The spirit is strong, but the body is weak. The mind will always overestimate ability and underestimate risk. You gotta reel it in. So leave pride and the expectations you impose upon yourself at the start of the trail. Allow the hike to reveal to you your weakest links and accept them humbly, inviting them to hike along beside you, hiking at their pace so as not to leave them behind. Your weaknesses are good company in the isolation of the wilderness, in the battle against gravity, so keep them close and you will ensure that your hikes remain injury-free. So when you see a fellow hiker sitting on a rock, chilling, enjoying some rest and recuperation, not pushing themselves, sipping on their homemade electrolyte-enhanced water, taking a chance to admire the scenery, that's an individual that's going to be getting there and back again injury-free. A humble individual that has found favour in the eyes of God. They'll be receiving the blessings tonight. The individual that all other hikers can count upon to call them an air ambulance when they tumble down the slope. Tippeth thy hat to them, it may bring you good fortune. To summarise, if you can prevent, mitigate or solve the problem of blisters, electrolyte depletion, dehydration, heat stroke, falling, getting lost and ticks, then you will be well prepared and well covered. That's pretty much everything you need to worry about. These are all lessons that you would otherwise have to learn the hard way, and they are all extremely punishing lessons to learn out in the middle of nowhere. No hiker will ever make those same mistakes twice, so if you can avoid them completely, then you're already miles ahead of the curve. Happy hiking, go ahead, lead the way. If the goal is to complete a hike injury-free, blister-free, and not have a body so worn out and banged up that it takes a week to recover, then everything in this video will help you achieve that. The name of the game then is to give yourself every advantage, to close the door on bad luck, to maximise your enjoyment and minimise your unnecessary suffering, so that your time in the wild is a rewarding endeavour, that you would hypothetically be ready, willing and able to do it all again the next day, rather than absolutely dreading the thought of having to do it all again the next day. If your hike is a quickie, 2 to 3 hours there and back, across flat terrain, in pleasant weather, not too far from civilization, then perhaps many of the tips in this video could be considered excessive. But if you aspire to increase the duration of your hikes, if the terrain becomes more arduous or the weather less pleasant, then everything in this video becomes increasingly more important and valuable. And perhaps it would be best to start developing these odd little habits, rituals and routines now early on, rather than have to learn the hard way later down the line, so that when the time comes, you will be well prepared and well practiced for your perilous trip all the way to the Lonely Mountain. A few months ago I made a video titled 35 Beginner Camping Mistakes, and much of what is covered in that video does also apply to hiking, and vice versa. So if you're looking for something new to watch afterwards, then be sure to watch that video. More useful info. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and peace!